in the interest of transparency, you want to know who paid for the rental today? Pay first. Why paid the $1,650? And I'm getting some echo here, so maybe I should try this out. And maybe that's why it's not very healthy today. And I'm still getting some echo somewhere. Maybe turn off all the mics. Can everybody turn off? But anybody who has a mic, can you please turn it off? All the mics are off. This mic also died already. Okay, I think the stand in the middle is carry to the rescue. Thank you. Okay, as I was saying, maybe that's why Roy is not so happy today. Because he paid the $1,650 first. So, sabongnya lah. Never ask me to give bio, cut and paste from internet, such a long one. If you go to my website, my bio is like 1/3 of the one that Brenda read out. Normally when I speak, I don't have slides, right? But today I have that. Why? Because today I'm starting off with Marua's budget submission. If I don't have slides, my president will call and talk to me for at least 1 hour. Of course, I think it's shorter to ask Hui to help me to do up the slides than to talk to my president for more than 1 hour. So that's why we have slides.
Cannot hear you, is it?
Tony Tan, my classmate from Raffles. You cannot hear, never mind. The last row can hear me? I think Tony, you have a problem with your ears. Brenda, when she started with an extremely long introduction, focused quite a lot on education. Mr. Hian also focused quite a lot on education. Ryan, really, I think you really rub it in again, right? If we don't spend the money that we spend on foreign students, correct me if I'm wrong, Roy, everybody free, right? So the problem is, when you listen to the Roy or you listen to Hian, you listen to Brema, it's all statistics, you know. But let me try and give you the, shall I say, the human side of the statistics. We spend on education as the second largest item in the budget. Defense is the most one. Do you know that when the news came out, I think about a week ago, that they want to cut the funding for independent schools? Why? Because all of a sudden, now you are being told all schools are supposed to be the same, you know. So the supposed elite schools have to cut. So when I read this, I said, something strange must be going on, right? Now we always say, when in doubt, what do you do? Go check up the statistics. So I looked up the Ministry of Education, MOE, Education Digest for 2013. Oh, lo and behold, you know, secondary school developmental expenditure in the last 14 years, in real terms, decreased by 82%. In practically every country's history, education is so important that most countries' education expenditure, and here I'm talking about operating expenditure for university students, most countries, that figure will increase every year at a percentage that is even higher than GDP growth. Do you know in the last 27 years, relative to GDP growth, our per capita spending on university education declined by, listen to this, 464%. I say that again, just in case you missed it. In the last 27 years, university spending per university student relative to GDP growth decreased by 464%. Was it Hian who said, want to search for your petition, just Google Hian National Service, right? So for me, this one very easy. Just Google Leong Hian, 464%. Nothing will come out. I think better use the slides now, although I'm not using that. This is Marua's submission for budget 2014. Oh, by the way, you know Roy did practically everything. The 10-part article, the 10-part infographics, the videos, the charts. He's the coordinator for today's forum. He pays the money for the rental. This guy is phenomenal. How a round of applause for Roy. I did about 10% of the work. Do you have something? How come the starting? Is this your slide? Okay. Marua's submission for this year's budget focuses on 3 areas, mainly education, healthcare, and retirement. What are you laughing for? For budget 2013, right? Like everybody else, Aware, Marua, everybody was thinking about, oh, we need to improve social mobility, we need to increase social safety nets, right? You hear this so often nowadays now. Every day you open the newspaper, you see the same thing. So let's look at the numbers and see how the rhetoric is being translated into the statistics. So this is the never-ending call, expanding further social protection. But look at what Roy showed you. We spend the least. So we have a lot to expand. And I'm wondering what the next part is all about. For education, total subsidies in the last financial year. Now just in case you see, how come Mr. Tan Hian one is 11 point something and this one is 10 point something. Hian is the budget for the current financial year. What I'm showing you is the actual finalized figure for the last reported financial year. 10.7 billion. How much fees do we collect from all the students? University fees, secondary school fees, 1.2 billion. But it's estimated that the poor parents amongst us, we pay out-of-pocket expenses about 1.6 billion. Like I said, if you are in like the Nordic countries, you hardly have to pay any out-of-pocket expenses for education. Of course, you pay more taxes, but more or less compared to Singapore, we shall talk a bit more about that later. So, government should increase expenditure by 2 billion. 2 billion is peanuts, you know, right? Last year, the reported budget surplus was 3.9 billion. So we say, okay, 3.9 billion, I spent another 2 billion in education, I still have a 1.9 billion budget surplus. But that's not all. According to the Department of Statistics, using IMF fiscal reporting standards, our surplus for the last financial year was a whopping $36.1 billion. IMF fiscal reporting standards means there are some things that you cannot report as expenditure, such as when you transfer to endowment funds, no country reports it as an expenditure. Only our unique Singapore fiscal reporting standards will report the transfer to endowment funds as an expenditure. So what this does, it gives you the impression that we have a lower surplus every year. Because this one actually cannot minus one. Then you have things like land sales. There are a lot of revenue that we do not count in our budget reporting. But use IMF standards, you never count them. And of course, we're also asking for full subsidies for childcare. So, bottom line, increase government expenditure on education, move the public expenditure as a percentage of GDP. Oh, I want to acknowledge my idol has arrived. It's the Leslie Chu. You know Leslie Chu, the cartoonist, the only Singaporean who has ever been arrested. What? Never mind. I know the police report arrested for something that nobody has been arrested for. Anyway, they let you out already. Welcome, Leslie. Look at how much money we are spending, look at billions, all these are what we call picking at the pieces. Just look at in total, how much money the government spends and how much we spend. 31.7% government subsidies. Out of pocket, 61.3%. The bottom line, roughly, every dollar of healthcare spending in Singapore, government spends 1/3 and you spend 2/3. Like I said, in the Nordic countries, there will hardly be any out-of-pocket expenditure for that. You know, when we look at percentages, statistics, they're quite meaningless. But if you do financial counseling, like many of my volunteers have done for the last 10 years or so, practically every day you need people who come and say, oh, you know, Mr. Leong, I'm homeless because I have to sell my house to pay for healthcare. Every day, you get stories of people come, Mr. Leong, my son doesn't go for treatment anymore because the treatment don't pay how. Let's look at what all this means for lower income people. You know, Medishield cover is the lowest medical cover in Singapore. It's not even private integrated shield. We have about 92.7% of the population of the residents who are insured under Medishield. This statistic was disclosed in Parliament. 2,400 Medishield claims in 1 year. The co-payment was more than $10,000. You know, Medishield is class C and B2. It's supposed to be the most subsidized, the cheapest ward that Medishield is supposed to cover. It's supposed to be poor, and that's why you only buy the cheapest plan Medishield. And yet, in 1 year, 2,400 lower income Singaporeans had to cough up more than $10,000 in co-payment. Co-payment is the deductible in the co-insurance. And that is the problem with our healthcare system, right? That the poor get hit worse. Hey Roy, how did you mention this one? Roy is this in school. That time he says in the staff he write, and then they split the whole night, very long, a lot of charts. But let me make a confession. Of all the research Roy has done, the best one is this one. So that is, if you take the simple benchmark measure that is used in the world today, okay, how to measure poverty? What is poverty like? There's one very simple measure. You just take the median income and you count how many workers earn less than the median income. Wow, Singapore is the highest of the high income countries. It's 26%. That means about a quarter of the people who workers actually earn less than half the median income. Scary, right? I estimate if you include the self-employed, the part-time workers, we are looking at about 600,000 people who earn less than 1,500, 400,000 people who earn less than 1,200, and more than 200,000 people who earn less than $1,000. We are truly a first world country. Look at the numbers. How much is our medicine expenditure? You know, in 1 year, how much we contribute to medicine? I said, nobody knows, but never mind. I keep this one to the end because this one a bit cheap, complicated. So we to the end. But the bottom line is this, the 3 M's actually is quite useless. And of course, Professor Tambaya is here. So during the break, let's ask him how useless the 3 M's is. But let me just give you one startling aspect of the 3 M's that shows you how useless it is. Like, this is this one. Look at this. MediShield is only paying 2.1% of Singapore's total healthcare expenditure. Find me another national health insurance scheme in the world that pays only 2.1% of total expenditure. We are not even. Yeah. Somebody asked in Parliament, how much is the MediShield claims to premium ratio? The answer came in the 10 years or so, 2001 to 2010, there was a surplus of 850 million. Most countries' national healthcare budgets and national health insurance schemes are operating in deficit. You can read about it every day in the newspapers. We are probably the only country in the world where national health scheme make money. And haven't even count the interest on this 850 million. This is just the pure claims to expense, premiums ratio. We have 60 billion in the Medisave accounts. And how much is withdrawn a year to pay for direct medical expenses? 700 over. So all this money, very little is being used. Now, when very little is being used from the government, from Medisave, from MediShield, what is the bottom line? It comes up from your pocket, cold, hard cash. What is not 3M? It's cash. You add up everything. It's only 1.3% of your total Medisave balance is being used every year. We have 3 billion in the Medifund, and yet only about 100 million is being used a year. Why are we keeping all this money in endowment funds and using, if I recall, peanuts every year, and then you end up paying a lot of nuts? That essentially is the problem of our healthcare system. You need to increase nurses' wages, you must have more wages, you must have more nursing homes, this will be good. We already talked about this, but since it's in the rural budget solution, we get a miserable 2.5% on the bulk of our supply. Domestic gets 16% from the section. GIC, excuse me, if you're very angry, you can throw your anger at somebody else. Okay? Look at the numbers. As Roy said, all these are implicit tax on Singaporeans. The problem is not just we are not getting a lot of benefits back. The problem is we contribute about the same in terms of, say, social security compared to the Nordic countries. But you fast forward to when we retire, you get so little back. And the reason is very simple. They are growing theirs at whatever rate of return they are getting on their pension funds, let's say 6%. We are getting as low as the miserable 2.5%. And that's why we find that at the end of the day, only an estimated 1 in 8 Singaporeans when they reach 55 can meet the minimum sum, which is currently 148,000, and highly retrenched from the CPF. In any country in the world, if you have a national pension scheme where only 1 out of 8 can meet so-called the minimum, we have a big problem. Oh, I'm so happy the slides are over. So now I can be my normal self. I analyzed the wages statistics yesterday because I know I'm speaking today. So I must pretend to do some research and not take all the glory, right? In the last 13 years or so, the real median wage growth in Singapore for the 8 basic categories of workers. You know, Singapore has 8 categories of workers. Cleaners, sales and service workers, managers, professionals, and so on. 8 categories. In the last 13 years or so, the real median wage growth for 5 out of the 8 categories was negative. And that's for 13 years after a just for inflation, no pay increase. Cannot find any country in the world, in the history of the world, that has such a dismal statistic that we are truly number 1. I say 5 out of 8. Also not so bad, right? 3 out of 8 have a positive real increase in wages per annum. Of the 3, 2 of them was less than 0.5% per annum. The highest one, only 0.78% per annum. Let me give you some examples. If you are earning $1,000 13 years ago, if your real wage growth, the highest one was 0.78, that means after 13 years, your real pay has only increased by $100, $10 a year. It is not just the wages that is an issue. The problem is jobs. In 2000, if you look at the employment change numbers, employment change is like jobs created now. Every year, how many more jobs are added to total employment? In 2000, the percentage of jobs created that were going to Singaporeans was 45%. Because in 2000, every 100 jobs they create, 45 went to Singaporeans. Then you look at the data from 2000 to 2006, I think, because this is a fairly old Ministry of Manpower report. Gradually, the jobs that went to Singaporeans start to decline. By my estimate, come to today, which is about 13 years later, if we make an adjustment for the huge influx of new citizens and new permanent residents that we have had in recent years, my estimation, it's just my estimation, why? Because they don't break down the data anymore into PRs and Singaporeans. I have no way of figuring out. I can only estimate. I estimate that now it may be as low as only 10%. Now you know why. There are so many people who say, oh, I get a job. Look, the problem in Singapore is this. Lots of unemployment, lots of underemployment, lots of long-term unemployed. Long-term is give up already, you know. A lot of economically inactive people who are economically inactive not because they want to, because they cannot get a decent paying job. You know, the propaganda today is quite unique. Every week got job fair, you know. Every time you see the same type of jobs, only thing they go around to a different place. But they never tell you what is the pay for the jobs. So the last one, I think a few days ago, there was another job fair. So they quoted 4 types of workers. I think it was sales and service workers, welders, machinists, and retail assistants, and customer service officers. So I used the MOM benchmarking wages tool. Check what is the pay of all these people. Basic pay for retail assistants is think $1,074, about $1,050 now. Right? Then, what about customer service officers? Cannot find insufficient data. What about machinists? Cannot find as well. Well, that's quite good, I think about 1,600. So the question got to ask is, the last vacancies report say, hey, so many jobs Singaporeans don't want there. More than 61,000 jobs Singaporeans don't want. Not only that, a lot of jobs, more than 6 months still cannot find people to work. All this is pure propaganda. Let me give you a classic example of propaganda. Since you're on the budget, you might notice that the newspaper started a new series called, with a dollar sign, The Budget and Me. Then they show you example of how lower income Singaporeans have benefit for the budget. So the first one is the classic one. It says that because of workfare, this man was able to buy a $1,600 computer for his son, so he can go to poly, right? So it says there, wow, there are about $200 increase in workfare. So I'd be curious to go and check. Hello, it's not $200 a year, it's not $200 a month. It's, to be exact, it's $177 in cash in workfare for this man. So $177 cash help him to buy a $1,600 computer. If this is the best kind of propaganda that we can come up with, okay, we have a problem. You notice every bus stop, everywhere, spending lots of money telling you, no, we are doing this for you, we are doing that for you. Must just save all this money and just do that. I'm going to end by telling you that not only from a cash flow perspective, and of course on a relative basis, do Singaporeans pay the highest taxes in the world, get the least benefits back, and this is manifested by the fact that if you look at the cash flows, the government does not spend a single cent on healthcare, does not spend a single cent on SDB, it does not spend a single cent on CPF. And that is the mother of all our problems. Whether you are fighting for human rights, or women's rights, or gay rights, or labor rights, or civil and political rights, unless this fundamental issue of our fiscal system changes, I think we're going to keep doing this, until God knows when.